I want to take a minute to go over the features and navigation on the new Village Pearl player. First of all, on the top of the player there are two recessed buttons. The small one is for the LED flashlight, which has 4 levels of brightness, and the larger one is the power button for the player. Press and hold the power button for just a second and the power will turn on, and that same press on the power button will turn it off again. Now, once the player has booted up, you'll see that the name of the current file is always displayed right in the middle of the screen. Now, the play button is right here in the center. Simply press it and the player will start to play that current file. Press the play button again to pause the player. Now, the time counter will appear at the top left here to track where you are as you listen. The Village player has 4 levels of navigation. The top level is language, and this language button will scroll through the different languages on the player. You can see the first 3 letters of the language stays displayed right up here. Now, inside every language, there's at least one folder. So in this particular player, we have the English language with 3 folders: Old Testament, New Testament, and Stories. Then as a second language, we have Spanish with the New Testament and Stories. And we also have a third language, a language of Mexico called Huastec, with the New Testament. So we have language, folders, and then books. And these 2 buttons will take you forward and backward through the books of the Bible, or perhaps the next set of lessons or stories, etc. And lastly, these 2 buttons will move you forward and backward by chapter in the Bible. So we have language, folder, book, and chapter. Then we have volume buttons, and the volume is displayed temporarily in place with the battery status right up here. While I'm mentioning this, if you do a quick press on the power button while the player is turned on, the actual percentage of the battery charge will also display for a moment right here as well. And then these buttons allow you to skip forward and backward about 15 seconds in either direction. So that's the navigation of the player. There's one more button that I have not yet mentioned. It's this top left button with 3 dots on it. This button switches between the 3 different sources for the audio player. The first source is the internal memory of the player. That's the content that comes loaded on the player. In this case, it's English and Spanish and Huastec. The second source would be a micro SD that can be inserted into this slot right here. Now, this particular micro SD has the Portuguese New Testament loaded onto it. So once it is inserted, pressing this button will allow the player to access that content. And here is the Portuguese New Testament. Now, the audio files that go onto the micro SD have to be prepared and structured in a certain way for the player to read them properly. So please reach out to us for help with this. Pressing this button again takes you to the third source, which is a built-in FM radio receiver. Tuning for the radio is done with the right and left chapter buttons. Now, the Pearl player does have a solar panel on the back to charge the player. For best results, the player needs to be in direct sunlight. Although it will charge on a cloudy day, it will take considerably longer. There's also a charging port here next to the micro SD slot, so you can charge the player with the micro USB charging cable, which is included. Here also you will find 2 3.5mm jacks. The black one is the headphone jack, and the red one is an audio input, allowing you to use the Village player as a speaker for a smaller MP3 player. So now we're going to just press that power button for 1 second again and turn the player off, and that will wrap up this instructional video on the Village player. Thanks for watching.